Hello there, dear viewer! This is my first Fallout 4 build. Better late than never, I guess. This is Bane! No, not this Bane, anything but this Bane, the other Bane.
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear. That comes later.
He relies solely on some good knuckles, because bare fists don't do much damage in Fallout, unfortunately, ballistic weave, and some hidden armor for protection. Also a lot of speed and additional protection when sprinting or blocking and or standing still. Well, before I overwhelm you with the awesomeness of the build, maybe a few ground rules for Fallout builds in this channel. This is my first Fallout 4 video, so I need to tell you about the mods I use and how I am about to approach this new exciting content. If you're not interested and not at all excited, then skip a few minutes, maybe 2, for the actual build. First, the legendary items system sucks, so I always use a mod allowing me to take the legendary effect off an item and place it on another item. Yes, it makes the game slightly a teeny-weensy bit easier, but it also removes the need to save scum and or loot lock or whatever you wanna call it. Love to Craft seems to be a good enough mod for this and is quite important for today's build because the legendary effects enable the combat style relying almost entirely on early game weapons. Second, I hate being limited in my fashion choices, so a mod allowing me to use armor pieces with any clothing while also letting me to make some armor pieces invisible is another must. This change can also make the game a tiny little bit easier, but I only play on survival difficulty, so give me a little bit of a break, okay? Armor and clothing overhaul is a good one for this. Simple, clean, and as far as I can tell, bug-free. Then a mod expanding the ballistic weave options. I simply use more weaves, which makes your protection on clothing items rely on your armorer perk instead of a questline, which seems less limiting than the vanilla solution. It also allows for adding armor rating to pretty much all clothing, even modded stuff, without depending on any extra mods or changing any other mechanics, so it's just a well-made and also kind of balanced mod. It has a little effect on the balance. The railroad weaves will still be slightly better on average. For this particular build I also used Wasteland Fashion for the nice jacket based off of the Elder Maxon's coat and HalfGasMasks because
no one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
And lastly, about the Fallout builds in general, I watched quite a few lately and I think I cannot stick to Fudge Muppet formula. I don't see a reason, for example, to make a level-by-level perk plan. It really depends on your personal playstyle. I may suggest some perks should be of higher priority than others, but I will actually go in the order of the special attributes the perks rely on. I also see no reason to religiously stick to the level 50 rule for Fallout 4. For Skyrim, it makes a lot of sense, as you may be capped in leveling if you don't want to make skills legendary, and the leveling is excruciatingly slow after level 50. In Fallout 4 it depends on your intelligence, it depends on how much you build and craft, what quests you do and when, so if a character has high intelligence and is intended to go through a lot of building and many quest lines, I think you can safely make a level 60 build without offending some secret holy book of builders. Okay, that was the boring part, but it needed to be said. Now let's talk about Bane! No, not this one, the other Bane. And no, I don't care about necromancing the Dark Knight Rises discussion, it's not the best flick in the universe, but I like the character and I like Tom Hardy, alright? Shush. Unfortunately, it's hellishly difficult to portray him accurately in the game, because Bane is stupidly strong, durable, agile, charismatic, intelligent, and of course, he was born in the dark, so his perception should also be impeccable. Well, we can't have it all without sacrificing some efficiency efficiency, so after a lot of tweaking and feeling like a very bad gamer, I focused on strength, endurance, agility and charisma, which is quite broad already. But I'm getting ahead of myself. A few words about the backstory first. So before the bombs, Bane was more of a mercenary than a soldier, hired by secret services and various espionage agencies, then used for special precise operations at the war front. He did and saw a lot of cruel and otherwise despicable things. He assassinated Chinese agents and officers in cold blood because he believed it may prevent the nuclear that's a nasty word to pronounce. Because he believed it may prevent the nuclear apocalypse. It wasn't until the last year before the bombs when he realized nobody really tried to prevent it anymore, and both governments were actually preparing for it. At this point he had many influential contacts around the world, so he started organizing a conspiracy to overthrow both warring states and force the peace, which was an operation kept in secret even from his wife. He was about to make some critical moves and inform the wife when the worst happened sooner than anticipated. After waking up from the cryo-slumber, he will doubt Sean's survival at first, focusing his efforts on building up a network of contacts and influence in the Commonwealth. His goal is to rule the land, if needs be with an iron fist, if needs be by subterfuge and terror, if needs be by brute force of the raiders. Even in this bitter and dark state of mind, the discovery of the father's identity will have a strong impact on him. The gloves may be off, but replacing people with sins may be worse than terrorizing them for cups and food, in his mind at least. From this point forward, he will believe humanity lives on borrowed time and may as well deserve even more bombs. On that depressing note, let's move on to the perks. We start off with 6 in strength, 1 in perception, 7 in endurance, 4 in charisma, which we will immediately increase to 5 with that your special book, intelligence of 5, agility 5 and 1 in luck. We need a lot of endurance because we will fight up close without power armor, which is scary. We need a lot of hit points then. An argument could be made that charisma is not the most vital, since I mainly used it for the local leader, a perk which is slightly less useful for raider overbosses than for anyone else, and we will become a raider overboss at some point. I still think the ability to scare and convince people with your sheer scary presence is a strong component of the OG character, so I went for the persuasive and intimidating dialogue options, relying on charisma, of course.
Do you feel in charge?
Over the course of the playthrough, we will need to raise strength all the way to 10 and take all ranks of armor for those modded ballistic weaves and some high-end armor modifications. All the ranks of Iron Fist for punching effectiveness, all in Rooted, which we will combine with some neat legendary effects to create some real lightly armored tankiness, and only 2 ranks of Blacksmith. One of quite a few benefits of sticking to the simple early game weapon is actually they only require 2 ranks, actually 1 rank could also be enough of the Blacksmith perk. Strong back at 2 ranks is optional, but since I always play survival, I took it just in case, just for the comfort and ease of it. In perception we don't need much, we will combine stealth with a more direct approach, so later in the game, if you play beyond level 50, you should or could consider raising the attribute itself to have more of a use for your compass in planning your next move, but the build is playable without any investment in perception. You don't need VATS, accuracy or anything like that. For endurance, we obviously want to max out the attribute itself sooner rather than later, but we won't need that many perks. I did take all toughness ranks, but it can be marked optional, cause our durability depends on the Sentinel and Cavalier legendary effects and on the Rooted perk more than on the sheer defense value. Both ranks of chem resistance, however, should be taken ASAP. Psycho buff and overdrive will be your best friends taken pretty much for every combat. Just hotkey your purified water when in survival mode. It's really not that bad, it's not that big of a deal.
It's not as bad as you think, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, okay.
Life Giver, especially its final rank, is an excellent choice if you are playing in survival. The slow health regen means less stimpack consumption, which means less water consumption, which means more money for you, which means better settlements faster, which means even more money. Pretty underrated perk if you ask me. The Charisma attribute should reach at least 8. This allows for local leader and inspirational. Granted, there are better perks, but our main combat style is pretty much already covered, and organizing the destruction of the entire Commonwealth is much more satisfying when you use the people of the Commonwealth as your tools. Intelligence is important to the roleplay, and not so much to the combat style. The attribute itself can stop at 7, and all the ranks of Chemist will help our drug-driven rage to become even deadlier. Very late in the game I also took 3 ranks of Science. We don't really need it that much, except for some helpful armor mods and weapon mods for our companion. Now, Agility totally necessarily needs to reach 10 or even 11 with a well-timed Vault Boy. Sprinting a lot around the battlefield is a major thing in combat with this one. It makes you safer, tougher, and of course faster. Sneak, Action Boy, and Moving Target are all vital, essential, superbly important. I don't know how else to say it, just take them all, take them soon. Especially that they combine so well with the gear. So, for the gear, we have a fully ballistic weaved pre-war hipster outfit, and thanks to the Love to Craft mod, we can wear 5 bits of hidden armor on top of that, or underneath that. Depends on how you want to rationalize your invisible armor. I went for medium combat armor because heavy was a little bit too much on survival. Use as many Cavalier and Sentinel legendary effects as you can. Since you can also put a legendary effect on the coat itself, you can have at least 3 of each. With the Rooted perk, you will have a massive damage reduction when standing still. Damage reduction is different to the defense value, works against all kinds of damage, and is generally better. It's generally better. Sorry, I'm practicing my American. It's generally better. Legendary effects pretty much always stack with themselves. And I'm quite sure Cavalier does too, meaning 45% damage reduction when blocking and sprinting. Plus the reduction when standing still. Whammon. Sorry about that. The legendary effects pretty much always stack with themselves, and I am quite sure the Cavalier does too, meaning 45% reduction when blocking and sprinting, plus the reduction when standing still. It can all make you near unkillable late game, especially when you can also sneak, run and hide easily. Who needs power armor? The mask can hold an auto steam legendary effect, not the best one, but it fits Bane, because, you know, the OG comic book character drags himself constantly and removes physical pain on top of his impressive natural strength and endurance. So with auto steam and biocom modification, it will have some functionality of the OG Bane mask. You also need aerodynamic, weighted, dense and custom fitted mods on your armor pieces. Dense is especially important if you want to punch those explosive robots, which usually ends with your demise without said modification. Custom fitted gives you more sprinting, which means longer lasting damage reduction with your legendary effects. For the weapons, we want fully improved Furious and Wounding Knuckles. Another cool thing about sticking with the Knuckles is that they are rather light, so even on survival difficulty you can have a few for different situations. Furious is good against high HP meatbags, although one could argue that bleeding damage is even better and more flexible and useful against many more targets, since it stacks with itself. You can see the rapid rate of bleed out if you are using VATS for melee. It's rather OP. There is a guaranteed instance of the Furious effect on a power fist found on the Swan. There is a guaranteed instance of Wounding effect that can be bought from the Nuka World Market Merchant. And also, even with all the perks and items, your combat style will remain rather risky, mate. So we will need to get used to near-death situations, which is why yet another set of knuckles, this time with the bloodied effect, letting you deal more damage the lower your health, will come in handy. Very late in the game you can even treat them as your main weapon. Some ranged weapon used mainly for taking down the turrets from a safe distance turned out to be inevitable, but really for the turrets only. Everything else was dealt with by running very fast and punching real hard. And for a cherry on top, a few cherries actually, we can add Strong's Affinity perk, Berserk. It combines very nicely with the Bloodied Knuckles. The Pack story perk, the Pack Alpha, increasing your melee damage and your damage resistance, is just a perfect fit for this one, so you probably have to support them in the Nuka World questline. Bloody Furies. If on top of all that you can also collect all the issues of Grognak the Barbarian, keep your adrenaline high and remember about those helpful drugs, you will have a very fast, tough, absolute murderer to play with a pinch of charisma-induced terror. And that basically sums up the entire combat style. By the way, stay mobile, act fast, choose your knuckles wisely, take risks, don't be afraid to stay low on health or on low health for a little bit. If things go really far down south, run away and use your sneak perks to reposition and rethink your situation. With a finished build, you should be able to punch down death claws like it's no biggie. Just sprint up to them and use VATS. Yeah, it's yet another benefit of early game knuckles. Their action point cost in VATS is laughable. Deathclaws usually like to flex before combat because I'm a scary lizard, so use it to your advantage. Sentry bots can be a little bit more challenging, high-end assaultrons too, but they are terrifying to pretty much everything except maybe snipers. Distract them by sending your follower ahead, of course. This is my answer to most combat-related problems in this game. Just send your friend ahead. So that's why I opted for inspirational. And that is it for today's Fallout 4 build. I feel fulfilled and eager to punch more deathclaws, of course. Let me know what you think. Our YouTube overlords have decided to hide the dislikes. So if you don't like the video, you have to write it down now, just in painful detail. Honestly, if you are still watching, despite not liking the video, I'm rather eager to hear your opinion, because you must be a little bit weird, huh? Otherwise, if you do like it, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, ring a bell, and we will see each other again, I hope. Bye. Bye.